I'm Elaine Sims. I'm on the campus of St. Catherine's College today on the Spotlight of St. Catherine's program for Channel 6. We are in the new library, the Emily Hunley Library that opened in the spring, and we are in the Board of Trustees room, which is a beautiful room. I have with me today now Dr. David Donathan. I think he's a familiar face to many of you that have watched our program. For those that haven't, I'm going to have him reacquaint himself with the new people and our previous viewers. Dr. Donathan, welcome.
Thank you.
You've been at St. Catherine's now?
This is my ninth year, and I'm currently the professor of management, and I also teach interdisciplinary studies. So basically, the Bachelor of Arts in Management program is under me, and I teach most of those core classes.
Interdisciplinary studies means?
Those are classes that I particularly enjoy because most classes are single disciplinary, which is academic jargon for a focused track, management, English, science. Whereas interdisciplinary studies classes deliberately cut across all academic spectrums in order to integrate studies so that students in one field of study are working with students in other fields of study on a topic that is common to all fields of study.
Okay. So they're studying everything at one time, but it's all related, so they're just they're connecting all the dots.
Yes. For example, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was the Perryville class that we're having on October 26th as a partnership with the Kentucky Historical Society. This is an interdisciplinary studies class because students from all of the academic fields are signed up, and we are very happy to partner with the Kentucky Historical Society again, and our students will be engaged in a KHS-sponsored teacher professional development workshop on historic battlefields in Kentucky. So for the college, because we are extremely supportive of sustainability and stewardship, these students from the college, to my knowledge, are the only students that have been approved to go to this teacher workshop, which is for school teachers.
And it's for school teachers?
It is for school teachers.
Oh.
And there are only 40 slots available statewide, and KHS has given us 6 of them. So our students will be training with public school teachers on battlefield preservation, the importance of preserving historic lands, and then they will write some papers on the importance of preserving historic sites and how preservation of our history is vital to our culture. So what we've done is taken a workshop at the state level, and we've afforded our students the opportunity to participate in that workshop in order to see how each of us and how our community and how our lands and culture all interface.
Well, and I bet I know most of the people are given that because during the Lincoln Bicentennial, Stuart Sanders, who is Civil War, wonderful man from Danville. And you know, being from Springfield, it is my home. The Battle of Perryville had a huge impact on this county.
Right.
50,000 students came through here the day before the battle.
And this is what the
Union and
students will
Confederate.
see, is they'll see how a little town in central Kentucky was a pivotal battle in the Civil War. And they'll be able to see how that site's been preserved, how the city of Perryville still has the old Merchants Row and a lot of historic buildings there that have been maintained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they've done an amazing job over there, and their little museum is wonderful. It's a lot of self-interpretation with stories, but stories are the best. I understand recently that one morning, it was just last week when we had that real heavy dew, that there's a farm here in Washington County, and I heard this in Louisville, that as the dew settled, they saw that there had been graves buried. And I still haven't found out where this farm is, but they did not know it was a burial ground. But then after the battle, all those soldiers were leaving. Many soldiers died coming through Springfield. And according to the records, the battle almost started here, but on Cemetery Hill. They had cannons set up, and they didn't. They left because there was no water.
Right, and which is an interesting thing. Gettysburg was basically an accidental encounter. Perryville was fought because it was an available water source. And the students will then begin to gain a better perspective of how Kentucky has been a key player in a lot of historic events.
And when you see the movie Lincoln, you realize how important Kentucky was to Lincoln.
Yes.
I mean, it's not, you don't have to be really educated in Civil War or Lincoln history to understand that very quickly how important Kentucky was in the Civil War and turning it around. Have you selected your students? Are they Kentucky natives?
Most of them are from Kentucky. It's just a standard class. Once we got approval to enroll students in the Kentucky Historical Workshop, we created an interdisciplinary studies class, and the students just enrolled in that class, which also fulfills one of their 2 required stewardship classes. So it was a very good opportunity for the students to make some progress towards degree completion and to be exposed to professionals outside the college who are going to show them the importance of lifelong learning, because most of the people that they will be dealing with during this tour are working teachers. And so they'll see that just because you're not in college, you don't stop learning.
Sure. My goodness, I've learned so much more since I got out of school. It's amazing. And I wasn't interested in history, but I definitely am now. Did you pick up on this and help this to happen? I mean, I assume that you were the impetus behind all this developing in the first place with the Kentucky Historical Society.
I've had a working relationship with the Kentucky Historical Society for about 8 years now.
Okay.
And we've done several projects with them. They had a major grant to document historic sites in a 3-county area.
Yes.
And they came down and trained one of my classes to do historical documentation and fill out the reports. And St. Catharine and the students are cited in the Kentucky Archives in this historic study because we provided about 100 survey reports of historic sites in Marion, Washington, and Nelson counties.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Last year when we had the Military Appreciation Day, we partnered with Kentucky Historical Society for the History Mobile, which at the time was highlighting Lincoln in the Civil War. So I've had a working relationship with them for a number of years, and they'll email me when these special events come up, and I try to work them in where we can.
Well, and I think this is exactly what they want to do. I mean, that's their purpose, is to come out to the community.
It is, and they're very good. They're very good to work with, and they're very supportive.
Professional, very professional. I mean, I have the greatest respect in the world for them. So that's going to happen October the 26th, and you have 6 students going.
I have 6 students going, and I have 3 or 4 faculty who are in the process of registering to go. So we should have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 people out of the 40 from St. Catharine College in this workshop.
I would love to go to that. It's an all-day workshop right there, I guess.
It's a 6-hour workshop, and then we'll have a follow-up class with the students.
Cool. That's great. Good for you. Good for you. I think Perryville is something that we see as in another county, but I think Washington County had a huge, huge role in that battle. Huge. There's great stories I could go on and on about stuff that happened at the Battle of Perryville from people from Washington County. Also, you have recently been elected to a new position with continuing higher education. Were you?
I've been a member of the Kentucky Association for Continuing Higher Education for about 8 years now. And St. Catharine College, in fact, is the only private college in the state that works with KACHE, which is a consortium of adult learning officers, continuing education officers at the major state universities, including ECTCS, Western Kentucky, EKU still has a small contingent, Murray State, Moorhead. And I was just elected to a leadership role. The way their leadership works is this year I will serve as the secretary of the Kentucky organization, next year vice president, and then in the 3rd and final year I'll be the president of the Kentucky Association. Wow. And the Kentucky Association is a subset of the National Association for Continuing Higher Education as part of the Southern Region.
Okay. You know, for someone like me, and I guess our audience, what do you do in these things? Tell me what do they do?
The most important part of the KACHE is it's Kentucky-oriented, where we all meet together because we all have a role in higher education.
In higher education.
And the focus of the organization is continuing to encourage adults by providing alternative means of education, whether it's credit or non-credit. And at our meetings, there are typically working sessions where we'll have working subgroups. Last week when we met at Western Kentucky University, for example, I was on the working group that talked about dual credit. And St. Catharine College has a phenomenal dual credit program where
you get
the high school students can earn credit toward their high school diploma as well as their college. In fact, at graduation in May, we had about 11 high school students from Washington County graduate with an associate's degree about 2 weeks before they graduated from high school.
Now, what were the classes most of those students were in?
It depends. I had one of the students is taking the business track. We were Jan Lance, Dr. Lance, who's the head of the teacher education department, runs that program, and she has extremely close contacts with Nelson, Washington, and Marion County high schools. So the high school will say, we need these classes for our students to fill the dual credit and the commander college requirements. And then we will typically work to create sections of those classes, whether they're business, English, math.
Do the students come out here for those classes?
We send faculty to teach in the high school, but
we've talked about this before, but
yes.
I think it's something worth talking about
and
again.
we also bring students to campus, and what we do that is unique that we discussed at the KACHE working group is they typically will use high school credentialed faculty to teach their dual credit classes in the high school, whereas we send our faculty to the high school to teach, to separate that from the AP program. And we also create
the AP program is
the advanced placement in high school.
Okay.
But we also have certain sections where we allow the high school students who are coming to campus under the dual credit program to enroll in the same class as our regular college students.
Okay.
And we do not identify those students in any way, shape, or form. And I've had a wonderful high school student who the other students in the class did not even realize that she wasn't a college student. And she was one of the students that graduated with her associate's degree, and I'm very happy she's back now to finish her bachelor's.
Now, if she's in high school and is going to come out here for a class, does a bus bring them?
Yes.
Because I figured, I mean, just because of the legal ramifications of transportation.
Dr. Lance works to schedule those classes within the framework of the high school schedule. Our faculty that teach those classes actually agree to teach outside the normal college rotation of days and times in order to accommodate those. So we bring the students out here. Some of the classes are high school students only, but then some, if we just have one or two students that need that class, we've created that mechanism for them to enroll, and it's really great because they're taking a real college class with real college students and real college professors, and it gives them a great taste of what college is going to be like.
Well, for our viewing audience, if someone's sitting here watching you talk about this, and they're hoping that their child is going to be able to go to college. Of course, it's expensive. Can they make a connection to ask if their child could be in this program?
They would go to their high school counselors and meet with the high school counselors, and the high school counselor is going to be able to give them the information they need.
Okay.
And I'm not going to try to go into the details because anything I say might be applicable to one school but not another.
Well, and I'm sure it depends also their achievements in high school.
There are some academic requirements and some other issues, yes.
Another thing for higher education, this is definitely still part of this discussion. Do they have to pay for this? Do the students, the high school, there was a grant originally.
I'm not able to talk to the finances of it, but I do know that it amounts to what we adults refer to as a nominal fee for the college credits.
Because I believe that there was a grant definitely that was given for this
there
a few
was
years
initially,
ago,
I believe.
and we were working with the high schools to get the students But I mean, gosh, it would be great for some of these students for what you're paying per hour for college education to be able to have
and at St. Catherine
going into college with that behind
we are
them.
so proud to be able to say we have high school students, I believe it was 11, that graduated diploma and associate's degree, so they already have the first 2 years of college done. And it doesn't get much cheaper than that to get a bachelor's degree anywhere.
They start as juniors?
They start as juniors.
Okay, I just assumed that.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, continuing higher education, which I can see too, but you know, of course, here at St. Catherine's, we have our program with Sister Barbara Rapp, which is the continuing, it's not continuing, well, what are we?
It's lifelong learning.
Yeah, lifelong learning, and there's been some incredible class. Well, Father Ben Brown gave one on the Maryland Catholic migration, and you know, there's a lot of educational, but then there's a lot of practical
and
things
these are
too.
the same. This is another one of the issues that KACHE discusses is the non-credit lifelong learning. And what's really great about it is it's an association not only of professionals in the field, but of the people that are actually working at the Kentucky Institutes of Higher Education who do this every day.
Yes.
So we're able to share a lot of ideas. I pick up a lot of ideas from them, and it's very interesting that even a small college like St. Catherine College, they will look and say, well, we didn't even think about doing it like that. For example, our dual credit is done by the education department. Their dual credit is handled by the continuing education department. So we see these differences, and we can discuss pros and cons and get really great ideas from each other. And they're a great group of people to work with, absolutely supportive.
So it's a wonderful way also to incorporate the community out here on the college. You know,
It is.
We're only 2 miles from town, but still sometimes it seems like we're 10. You know, and this is one way to
Right.
keep it. You know. Also, I mean, if anybody's watched our show, they know that Dr. Donathan goes on a trip every year, and we have to talk about it because every year I'm just fascinated. This past summer, you went to Cuba again.
There was the second year that we've taken students to Cuba. This year was a little different in that I had students from two other universities. Oh. I had a student from American Military University who I worked with her faculty, and she actually completed her capstone master's degree program course in Cuba. And we had an art student from Arizona State University who I was working with her faculty, and she completed a women's art project based on Cuban studies.
Did she really?
She did, and it was a phenomenal trip.
How many went?
The total in our group was 20. There were just 3 of us that were associated with St. Catherine College. What's been amazing is in the 3 years, the societal changes, the cultural changes in Cuba have been phenomenal.
Really?
And you know, they've done things like you can now open a private restaurant in your home. You can now buy and sell privately automobiles. And if you own your car, you can now get a private taxi license. And it's so incredible that in 3 years, they've come from a very closed economic structure. When we toured the technical school in Havana this year, these are the students that are trained in historic preservation. They are the ones that go in and can recreate 17th century stucco walls that look like the original.
Goodness.
And those students are in such great demand that in the summer they would work privately off the books. And they can now, at the technical school, while they're learning restoration, take a track in entrepreneurship where they are now being taught how to be independent contractors and run their own business so that they don't have to go to work for the state government.
It's kind of like Sister Angie's leadership, you know, with the how to open your own business.
It is, and it's just been some phenomenal changes.
What do you attribute all that to for our audience that doesn't know? Why the changes?
Part of it is economic pressure. Part of it is Cubans want to normalize relationships with the U.S. because there are so many Cuban-American families, and Cuban-American ties historically, socially, and culturally are incredible. Bacardi Rum started their major company in Havana.
Bacardi Rum did?
Bacardi Rum, and they still have the old Bacardi Rum building, which is being restored. We look a lot of the American sugar used to come from Cuba.
Right, right.
But there's been the political issues, and we still technically have a total trade embargo with Cuba. 3 years ago, you could not use American dollars in Cuba. You had to convert your American dollars to Canadian dollars or euros in order to exchange them for Cuban currency. This year, you could take U.S. dollars and exchange them at any authorized currency exchange office for Cuban currency directly without having to do the intermediate exchange.
But there's bound to have been a political climate change for this to happen in 3 years. I mean, this is pretty amazing, really.
The travel restrictions have been eased greatly. There are still, you just still can't decide to get on a plane and go to Cuba legally. But there you can get, we go under an education license. You can go for religious studies.
Okay, yes.
So there are some legal licenses that you have to go through to get. And the company we deal with has been doing this for over 22 years. And
so you go through a company
and they're actually a Canadian company. Okay. But yeah, so even though we have a trade embargo, the tourism part of it was eased by executive order signed by President Obama 3 years ago. But in terms of, for example, if you take your cell phone, because it's a U.S.-based cell phone, it will not work.
Okay.
Your credit cards, your debit cards, anything that is issued by a U.S. bank will not work. So there still is the trade embargo. There are restrictions on what you're allowed to bring back to the U.S. But I think that Cuba is pushing hard to try to normalize relations just because they need the economic ties to the U.S.
Do they have a different relationship with Canada than the United States?
They do. They have a different relationship with virtually the rest of the world.
Okay. Well,
to my knowledge, there are basically,
for any of us that want to look back at our history,
there are basically two countries that fall into that total trade embargo: North Korea and Cuba. And I'm not really aware of any other countries that are specifically totally embargoed by the U.S.
Okay, interesting. Is it beautiful there?
It's gorgeous.
I mean, I envision it as just being the flowers. I mean, the tropical.
When you go out into the country, it's very semi-tropical. Because they don't have a lot of technology, they haven't got huge numbers of cars. They haven't done a lot of development. Within the city, they have tremendous preservation and restoration programs, and in 3 years, I've seen Old Square Havana virtually completely renovated to its virtual original state from the 17 and 1800s. So
that's amazing. It's great that you're here, just of course, to tell us everything that you're doing, but just to learn this about Cuba. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting.
And the Cubans are very friendly people, in fact, and they want American partnerships. We're hoping to run another class in the fall semester next year, and I'm working with Coach Lena Bramlett and Coach Tyler Campbell, the women's basketball team, and we are just waiting on the confirmation of the dates, and we're hoping to take the women's basketball team to Cuba about a week and a half before the fall semester starts, and they will do their preseason training and conditioning at the Cuban National Sports Training Center, working with the same staff that trains the Cuban Olympic team.
Wow.
So we're real excited about that opportunity, and that will be another interdisciplinary studies class where other students will have specific projects. I have a couple of management students that are interested, and we'll be looking at emerging entrepreneurship, economic changes in the last 5 years. It's a wide open field. People can work with Miss Betty Brookfield on an art project where they would do an independent research and presentation, because the public law does require that your research be done with a reasonable expectation of publication or public presentation. So we're hoping to take students from different fields that'll have different projects and then do a series of student presentations on campus in August, September, October, where they will publicly show what they've learned in Cuba.
Okay. And the students pay for this themselves if they do that?
The way we're structuring the course is there is a course fee which will cover the cost of the travel. So the college is not paying for those. Of course, we'll do as much fundraising as we can to defray expenses.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a typical class in terms of how it's funded and the academic expectations and requirements.
Okay. Very interesting. There's always so much to talk about with you.
It's just an exciting time to be in education.
It is.
Truly
It really is. It really is.
And you work with community partners. I'm working again. I worked with Serrano Alpacas on an interdisciplinary studies on sustainable business, where the students actually studied the business of natural fiber production, and they were able to see literally start to finish because they saw the baby alpacas and they helped shear. They helped in the shearing of the alpacas to see where the fibers came from.
And this all goes along hand in hand with the new ag program.
It is, and it's all part of St. Catharine College being a community partner and working with the community as much as we can.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. This has been a lifelong dream, I know, for everyone on this campus.
And the community looks for opportunities to partner with us. Internships, community partners in classes. Dr. Baines has worked with some of the local people. I've been working with Sister Claire, and we now have, through the New Pioneers, the year-round local product stores just opened with Steve Smith and Talina.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. You're going to have to come back because we could go on and on, except we're just out of time.
That's true.
But thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much.